Hello everyone, in this tutorial we're going to take a look at how to add custom functions and properties to our project. Now first of all I'm going to drag my character sprite onto my scene here. And actually she's a bit too large, so I'm just going to shrink her down just a little bit. And if I go to properties, we're going to give her a name, just call her player. And we're going to set the position to 0 and 200 on the y-axis, so she's quite low down. We are also going to add a chili as an image, and we're also going to shrink that down a bit because it's a bit large. We'll set that to position 0 and this time minus 200. Okay, so if we run our scene, we should see our chili and our character. Now I'm just going to keep moving the character down until she's actually at the bottom of the scene on the floor. That's a bit too far. Let's just try 240. Still slightly too far. We'll try 235. There, that's close enough. So we have our character on the bottom of our scene and we have the chili. Now what I'm going to demonstrate here is sort of like a power-up feature that you would get in an old game. So the classic example is whenever Mario gets a mushroom, he gets twice as large. That's basically what we're going to do here, but to do it, we're going to need some custom functions at some point. Now, before then, we can do it without them, but I'm going to explain why that's not the best idea. So first of all, we need the not the mushroom, I'm thinking in Mario Land. We need the chili to move down, as it is our power-up. So we're going to go to functions, on add to scene, this dot move to, we're just going to set 0 for the x coordinate, 1000 for the y coordinate, just to make sure it goes below the player, and the speed can be 200. So let's just quickly run that and make sure everything works. Indeed, the chili goes off the bottom of the screen, that's perfect. So now, the character needs to be able to collide with the chili. Now, we covered collision in one of the previous tutorials on collision detection, so if you want a more detailed explanation, you can look that up. But for now, we'll just keep this quite simple. So we need to go to the characters on update function. And in here, we need to get a list of objects that are overlapping with our character. So we do this dot get overlapping objects. And that's all we need to do there. So that will return an array of objects we're overlapping with. So now we need to go through that array. So we need a for loop. So for every object in the array, we need to process it differently. So in this case, we only have one type of object, and it is a power-up. But in a full game, you'd have a lot more. So this is why you need the array and lots of different ways of handling whatever you've collided with. So in the case of our power-up here, we want to make our character a lot bigger, and to do that we're going to have to get the sprite data. So var sprite equals this dot get sprite. Oops. This is just so I don't have to write this dot get sprite all over the place, because that makes it a bit ugly. So what we're going to do is increase the size, so we can do sprite dot set size. And I'm going to increase the size by about 1.5 times, so we do sprite.getSize.x times 1.5, and we do the same for y, sprite.getSize.y times 1.5. I know I'm going over this kind of quickly, but it's not really the main goal of the tutorial, so I just need to get something basic that works. We also want to remove the chili, so we can do wade.remove scene object objects I, which is the current object we are dealing with. So hopefully if we run this, the chili will go down and it disappears and the character gets larger. But as you see, there's a slight flaw because the character is getting larger about her center and she goes off the bottom of the screen, so we need to move her up by the amount she's got larger by. So to get this y offset value, we need to do a little calculation. So I'm going to create a new variable, var offset, and we need to get the size of the sprite minus the size of the sprite in the y direction before it was multiplied. So that'll get us how many pixels we've increased in the y direction. And I think we actually want to divide that by 2 because that's spread out over the top and the bottom of the character. So we actually, we want to divide that value by 2. So we'll do the calculation, then divide it by 2. So now we need to set her position. So all we have to do is this dot set position, this dot get position dot x, because her x position is unchanged, and this dot get position dot y minus our offset. So hopefully when we run it now, let's just see the chili goes down and she gets bigger, but her feet stay on the ground. So that's exactly what we want. We've got a very nice little power up working here. So what's the problem with this? Well, first of all, if you're in a game, there's a lot more things the player could be colliding with than just a power up. It could be bullets, it could be terrain, it could be enemies, it could be anything. And if you start putting all that code in this for loop, it's going to get very, very messy very quickly. So the first thing we want to do is move this all out to a function. Now, it doesn't really belong in any of the built-in functions for Wade, like any of the event handlers. So we're going to create a new function, and the way we do that is simply with this plus button. So add custom function, and we're going to call it power up. So if I add that function, we immediately switch to it, and it is now in our list here at the bottom, just below on update. So all we need to do is go to on update, cut our code from here, go to power up, and paste it straight in there. And I'll just neaten up that offset a little bit. There we go. So hopefully this should do exactly the same job. So instead of having all that code in on update, all we have to do is call this dot power up. There we go, and if we wanted, we can even pass this object in to remove, but we're not going to quite go that far. So if we run it, let's just make sure the functionality is still the same. And indeed it is, it still works. So that's quite good, but our character doesn't really have any sense of whether she's big or small at any one point in time. We could check the size of the sprite, but that's really messy, and you'd have to keep in your head all the different sizes of all the different sprites for all the different power-ups, and it would be very impractical. So a better solution is we can go to the player properties. We can also add custom properties to our scene object. So here, I'm going to move this drop down list. We see empty objects, so we have none. I'm going to click this little tab here and append the green plus. So here we get to choose the name of our field and give it a value. So I'm just going to keep this very simple. We're just going to call this big, and it's going to start off at false. So at the start of the game, when she's added to the scene, the big property of the player character is false. And if we go back to our function, which is power up, we are going to simply do this dot big equals true. So now the character is larger. And we're going to do two things just to show that this is actually happening. The first is we're going to do some console logs. Now, I'm going to cover this in a later tutorial, so I'm just going to go over it very briefly now. But basically, we can write some code that will return a little message to the editor just to let us know what is going on. So if we quickly go to the onAddToScene function, we are just going to write console.log this.big. So hopefully that will just return false because she's not supposed to be big at the start. We are going to copy and paste this, and we are going to put it in our power up function right at the end. So here it should return true because we've just set it to true. So if we save now and run, we want to look at the bottom left, this line that currently says saved scene. We're just going to play. We should see false appear there and then true. So false and then true. Now I realize that's quite hard to see with this open, so let's just double click down here. We get a quit log. False and true, so indeed we've updated the state of our player. So this is very useful, and likewise you could use this if you had multiple power-ups. You could have an is power-up object and you could select that to true. So in fact, if you wanted to handle the collisions a bit more sophisticatedly, you would go into on update for the player character, look at the collisions, and you could test. You could have an if statement, is objects I is power-up. And then you could try is enemy, is whatever. All you have to do is set that property for the scene object. So that's a very quick guide of how to make custom functions and custom properties.